the shooting range. In this episode, pages of history, the Mauler's short life, Triathlon, radar SPAAs of all 10 nations, and Metal Beasts, the little Israeli chopper. A few pages of history ago, we told you about a compact, light helicopter made by the Hughes Company in the early 1960s. It's been in service for almost half a century and has no plans to retire yet. But how does it play in war thunder? Let's take a look. This is the Israeli MD-500 TOW Lahatut. It has a classic helicopter design with two rotors, one main helped by another one on the tail. The lift is provided by a turboshaft engine. The fuel is stored in 3 self-sealing tanks. Available weaponry includes up to 14 rockets or 4 guided missiles. Much like all other helicopters, the MD-500 can be used in 2 ways. Number 1 implies using unguided weaponry at the very beginning of a battle. Unfortunately, there isn't much to expect from only 14 rockets. With some extra luck, you can damage 1 or 2 enemies and leave unscathed yourself, but your next attack after the reload is highly likely to be stopped by AA fire. That's why tactic number 2 is more efficient. Gain some extra respawn points by playing a tank to take 4 guided missiles. The best ATGM available for this heli is the TOW 2. Compared to its predecessor, this one has a much higher velocity and a penetration rate reaching 800 millimeters, but the same maximum range of 3,750 meters. And that performance basically sums up all the tactics for the MD-500: distance and maneuvers. Stay around 3 kilometers from the battlefield to have enemy tanks just in range. Try to avoid getting closer since each 100 meters makes it easier for the ground vehicles to hit your heli. Move around close to the ground. When possible, hide in the landscape, forests, or buildings. Then peek out of your cover, send an ATGM, and sway side to side while it's on its way to make it harder to aim at you. Once the missile scores a hit, dive into cover right away. Having a helicopter that small and agile sure comes in handy here. Hitting this tiny target from 3 kilometers away is no easy task. Still, this minimalistic design of the aircraft brings some flaws as well. First, its maximum load is only 4 missiles, which means lots of reloading. Second, with no guns or cannons on board, this heli is highly vulnerable to enemy air. The only way to defend is to try and hit them with a guided missile, and that's pretty hard to pull off. Point number 3 is low survivability. With no armor and only one engine, the MD-500 is extremely vulnerable. It'll go down almost every time it's shot at, so you might want to stay undetected at all costs. In the 1940s, the decks of American aircraft carriers welcomed the Helldiver, a plane capable of both dive bombing and torpedo carrying. All hell broke loose with it. A new wave of engineering madness was triggered. Competitors tried their best to create a similar machine but with next-gen performance. Their logic was simple. If the Helldiver had a 14-cylinder radial engine, then the next-gen machine must have an 18-cylinder one. And while Douglas, Curtiss, and Kaiser Fleetwings were busy designing such machines, the Glenn L. Martin Company decided to skip the whole generation thing. They wanted to build an even more powerful 28-cylinder engine. Its design looked very promising back in 1943. Moreover, the Navy wasn't too enthusiastic about the Douglas destroyer in 1944, despite all its new features and great solutions. The war was coming to an end. The long-awaited peace meant fewer orders, and that only made the competition harder. Both Curtiss and Kaiser Fleetwings left the race. The respectable Ed Heinemann and his team from Douglas were ready to roll the future Sky Raider out of the assembly hangar, but the Mauler, Martin's assault aircraft, was beyond comparison. It was an enormous armored beast with a 3,000 horsepower engine and a maximum takeoff weight reaching 12 tons. It could carry up to 4.5 tons of ordnance at a speed exceeding 480 kilometers per hour, and with a range reaching 2,500 kilometers. Even some twin-engined tactical bombers couldn't boast such performance in 1945, and the Mauler was a carrier-based plane, and a dive bomber to boot. The Sky Raider simply had nothing to respond with. Pilots would take their seats in this insane winged beast and fall in love with it at first flight. Yeah, it was hard to land on a deck, but would it frighten anyone after the Helldiver? Yes. This machine would shake wildly when diving at a high speed. So what? It wasn't like it was breaking apart anyway. Quite the opposite. It was a warning to cool it down a little. Yes, the back rows of the mighty 28-cylinder engine would almost glow red with heat. Well, there was always a replacement engine if that one burned up. The issues came from an unexpected direction. You see, the Mauler was made for combat. It was made for the big world war where the sides put everything at stake and followed the famous higher, better, stronger motto. But the war was already over, and peacetime made operational costs an important part of a plane. As it turned out, a single hour of flight on the Mauler was simply too expensive. Maintenance and repairs were so complicated that while pilots worshipped it, the mechanics cursed it. What was even more important, there was basically no one to solve the remaining issues anymore. Glenn Martin was losing his grip with age, his company was losing valuable employees, and thus delving deeper into a crisis of production and ideas. So the US Navy Command looked around and found that the Douglas Skyraider that was warming the bench actually seemed more practical. Its 18-cylinder engine was more reliable, long-lasting, and familiar for the ground crews. Moreover, Skyraider formations could carry more load for the same time and money spent. Yes, it took more planes and they flew slower, but they were simpler and easier to handle. So that's how the Mauler's service history turned out to be so modest. There were only 150 best of the best made, and even those failed to prove their worth in battle. They were used as land-based aircraft, which meant no ticket to the Korean War. The pilots switched from their Maulers to Skyraiders. Still, knowing full well how reasonable that switch had been, they didn't try to hide their regret at parting with their favorite beasts. Today's triathlon will be a truly massive one. For the first time, all 10 nations will participate in our competition. Please welcome early radar anti-aircraft vehicles. The American M163 and its Israeli cousin Hovet, the German Gepard and the Japanese Type 87, the Soviet Yenisei and the Chinese PGZ-09, the South African ZA-35 and the French AMX-30 DCA, and finally, the Italian CDAM-25 and the Swedish VIK-40. As usual, we'll start with testing the mobility of our contenders. Getting ready, let's go! The only wheeled machine in the race gains a lead right off the start. Then we see a tight group of 6 more vehicles, while the Italian, Israeli, and American machines seem to be lagging behind. By the end of the first leg, only the Japanese and the German machines are racing for silver, with the French machine getting very close in the dunes. The Yenisei lost its place and is now firmly in 7th place. The snowy part proved troublesome for the wheeled leader of the race, and it looks like it's losing its lead. The riverbed slows everyone down, and the first 7 are now going tight again, with the leader being the French vehicle this time. And here's the finish line. All of our competitors turned their turrets backwards and are now firing to get a tiny bit of extra propulsion. The French team decided to show off their transmission, so they're driving in reverse, but it doesn't look like it's very helpful. The South African wheeled machine gained speed again, charging into the lead, and wins the race. The AMX comes second, the Chinese team comes third, then the Gepard and the Yenisei, and finally the rest. The second trial will test how well our anti-aircraft vehicles perform against tanks. We know it isn't their main job, but wouldn't you agree you have to do it pretty often? Let's take the M60 facing us with its side at 200 meters. The M163 and the Hovet drew the first match. Their 20mm Vulcans barely have enough penetration for the lower part of the hull. The only reason they managed to destroy the target quickly is their fire rate. Next comes the South African vehicle. Despite a much lower fire rate, its armor-piercing rounds damage the target with more confidence. The CDAM loads some sabot rounds and saws through the M60's side in no time. Unfortunately, it also took the whole AP belt. A similar result is shown by the German, Japanese, and Chinese contenders. Their 35mm discarding sabot rounds have the highest penetration rate that can easily handle even the turret sides, but only 40 of them are available. The Yenisei, VIK, and AMX show a much more impressive performance. Their AP rounds can pierce almost any part of the side, and their number is only limited by the total ammo pool. Finally, the most important test for any anti-aircraft vehicle is, well, fighting enemy air. We'll set up 2 targets. First, a Huey hovering 3 kilometers away. Second, an Il-28 flying around our contestants around 1.5 kilometers away. The mission is to detect and destroy the targets as fast as possible. The Italian, Israeli, and American machines have no search radar, so their gunners have to peer into the skies with their own eyes. With a high rate of fire, handling the bomber takes no time at all, but the helicopter poses a problem. The caliber is too small for that distance. Vehicles with 30, 35, and 37mm cannons have a lower rate of fire, but much better range. Moreover, they're all equipped with search radar systems, meaning they had no issues finding and hitting the targets. And the fastest result was produced by the Swedish team thanks to their 40mm HEVT rounds. These don't even require a direct hit. Let's begin the awards ceremony. The bronze is shared by the German Gepard and the Soviet Yenisei today. Both machines are fairly balanced, but that's about it. The silver goes to the Swedish Vik 40. It's the best choice for all your anti-aircraft needs, but it needs a little extra in terms of traits to win the competition. Now we're happy to award the gold to the French AMX-30 DCA. It's a versatile machine, perfect for hunting both enemy aircraft and supporting Allied tanks in their ground skirmishes. Our crews are celebrating the largest triathlon in our history with some fireworks. And while you're taking in the view, we're going to answer some of your questions from the comments. The first question was sent by a player called Hamza Sheikh. Which will be a powerful decision in bullet selection? Ground targets or air targets? Hi, Hamza. High explosive and incendiary ordnance is more efficient when shooting at aircraft surfaces because they have a higher chance of setting the plane on fire. It's also easier to destroy open-top ground vehicles with them. Armor-piercing rounds are more efficient in frontal attacks because they have a higher chance of knocking out the engine or the pilot. They're also pretty good when attacking some closed-top ground vehicles. 23 Fallout writes, "Hey, how do I get that aim and gunner view that YouTubers get that when you go in gunner view, you see from the front of the barrel, but in game I get a view from the side of the turret with my gun? How do I get that view?" Hi there, Fallout. If you want to get that barrel view in arcade and realistic mode, go to Options, Main Parameters, Ground Vehicle Battle Settings, then find Camera from Tank Gunner Sight and set it to No. Another question comes from Dim Dim. Is it true that the Swedish B-17 landing gear can be used as an air brake? Hey Dim Dim, yes it's true. You can use the chassis on this aircraft as an air brake at any speed up to 320 kilometers per hour. Ayako asks, will helicopters get their custom loadouts too? Hi Ayako, yes, new helicopters have a custom loadout option already, and more machines will receive this feature in the future. And the last comment for today was written by Sajed Aid. What's the best looking plane in your opinion? Hello, Aid. Tupolev, a famous Soviet aircraft engineer, once said that only beautiful planes fly well. No doubt that the looks have no practical effect on a plane's flight performance, but there's still a grain of truth in it, isn't there? Maybe that's the reason some aircraft fans find pretty much every machine beautiful. It's way too hard for us to select a single prettiest machine, or even 2, or even a dozen, really. That's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Subscribe and click the bell if you don't want to miss our next videos. Don't forget to ask the mirror on the wall who's the fairest plane of all. Leave a like, share your thoughts and comments, and see you next week.